செந்தாமரைக்கும் பாதச்சிலம்பு பல இசைப்பாடும். இவ்வளவு அழகான தமிழிலே சிறுவர் சிறுமியர் பேசும் பொழுது நான் இங்கு ஆங்கிலத்தில் பேச வேண்டிய நிர்பந்தம் இருக்கின்றது. அதற்காக முதற்கண் மன்னிப்பு கேட்டுக்கொள்கிறேன். இவர்களுக்காகத்தான் ஆங்கிலத்திலே பேசலாம் என்று எண்ணியிருந்தேன். ஆனால் அவர்கள் அழகு தமிழிலே என்ன வடிவாக இந்த நாடகத்தை நடத்தி காட்டினார்கள். என்றாலும் சில பெரியவர்களுக்காக ஆங்கிலத்திலே சில வார்த்தைகளை சொல்லலாம் என்று இருக்கின்றன. The life story of Manickavasagar has got three, as you probably heard, there are three stages where the names change. He was born as Vadavur in the village of Vadavur, which is very close to Madurai. Some of you might have already visited the shrine. The story starts near Madurai and actually ends in Chidambaram. So Vadavur was his name given to him at birth. And then, as you heard, he became Tennavan Brahmanaya. Adimartharapambiyan conferred the title of chief minister in his kingdom, and he became Tennavan Brahmanaya. And then, on hearing his melodious and meaningful songs, Lord Shiva himself gave him the title Manickavasagar. Manikam is ruby. They are as precious as the rubies. So he said, உன்னுடைய வாசகங்கள் எல்லாம் மாணிக்கங்களாக தோன்றுகின்றன, நீ இன்று முதல் மாணிக்க வாசகராக வாழ்வாய். So that was a blessing given by Lord Shiva. So those are the three names that we have to remember when we talk about Manickavasagar. I'm going to highlight only a few points. Time is short, but just for you to remember these and perhaps refer them when you get home. If you look at the statue of Manickavasagar, it's important to recognize. When we spoke about, if you remember, about Thurkkai, he was carrying the hoe, the Ulamara Padai. When we spoke about, incidentally, I must pay my thanks to Shambhavi, who played the violin for the Thevaram group so well. Thank you. When we spoke about Jnana Sambandha, he had the symbols given by Lord Shiva to hear the music. When we come to Manickavasagar, if you observe the statue closely, you see two things. On the one hand is the rosary for his meditation. On the other hand is ola leaves or palm leaves. Where do you find the same combination? If you look at the statue of Lord Dakshinamurti, you will find the same thing. He carries the ola leaves and he carries a rosary. If you look at Goddess Saraswati, she plays the veena with two of her hands, but on one hand she has the rosary and on the other hand she has the ola leaves. So in other words, it coincides with Manickavasagar being a very intelligent, learned man. That was the special quality of Manickavasagar. He was respected for his intellect. As a young person, the king heard about this young man and came and invited him to be the chief minister. That was his intellect. And you see that in the rest of his life. In many places, his intellect shines, but this time it is devoted to the service of God. Now the story moves on to, as you saw, from Tiruvallur to Tirupperundurai, which is now known as Avaliyar Kovil. So he took the money he spent on horses for the kingdom, and he spent it on feeding the poor and also building this beautiful temple, which stands even today. And not very long ago, about a couple of years ago, there was a new culvert which was discovered, a carving where it certifies that the Manickavasagar made a contribution to the building. So that is the story of Avaliyar Kovil. I also want to refer to two people in connection Lord Manickavasagar. One is Dr. G.U. Pope. Have you heard of Dr. G.U. Pope? Yes. Dr. G.U. Pope was a missionary who was born in Canada but moved to England, and he went to spread the gospel to South India. And he settled in a school in Bangalore. But what he did was, this was in 1820 years old, what he did was he learned Tamil. And he spent time researching the Thiruvasaram, which we celebrate today. He translated the Thiruvasaram into English. And in his writings, he says that as he wrote about the Thiruvasaram, many times his tears went and spoiled what he was writing, the ink. And he said he has never come across anything that is more melting than Thiruvasaram. That is the power of this Thiruvasaram. Someone who was born into a Christian family, who went to India to spread the Christian message, now got converted into a Hindu, into a Saivite, and he was singing the praise of Thiruvasaram. So we need to remember the service done by, and then he returned. He returned to Wembley College in Oxford, where the memorial is still there. And there, when he was 80 years old, he published the translation of Thiruvasaram into English. That was our cause. Another point that I need to mention here is that I don't know how many of you know that Thiruvasaram is even now sung in Thailand, in Sivan, during the coronation. It was the Cholas who took Thiruvasaram to Thailand. They don't know the meaning of that. And Dr. John Ma, who is attached to the Barfield, has researched and published this. It is still sung without them understanding what it is, but the same tradition still continues. Now, we were singing Namachivaya Valda, Nathan Valda, as we were taking Manickavasagar, as we were circumambulating the shrine. And it's important to recognize a few things. Because as you saw, when Manickavasagar came to receive the blessings, we didn't actually see it as such, but it was his feet that were kept on Manickavasagar's crest. And that was the blessing he got. Nirandanmir Mandaruli, Nilkadal Karti, Naid Kadayai, Kidanda, Adiyet Kitta, Savana, Dawana Tatuvadi. He was always remembered that he was blessed by Lord Shiva's feet. And if you look at the Siva Puranam itself, the first 5 lines end with Valda in praise of Lord Shiva. The next 5 lines, Velha, may he be victorious, his fame. Then poetry, he is praising Lord Shiva. So the 15 lines get taken up, and then on the 16th one he says, Arada Illam Arulum Malai Potri. He is praising Lord Shiva as someone who gives unquenchable grace to him. And then he talks about the purpose as to why is he singing the Siva Purana. Munnaya Vinayamuludum Moya Urapanya. Some people say Oya Urapanya, but apparently the correct pronunciation is Moya Urapanya. Oya Urapanya, Oya means to subside. Moya Urapanya is it completely is extinguished, completely it disappears. So all the old karma is completely gone when you recite the Siva Purana. Avan Arulade, Avan Thalmanandi, again I worship his feet. Sindai Pagada, Siva Puranam Thanne, Munnaya Vinayamuludum, Moya Urapanya. So that was the purpose of reciting the Thiruvasaram. Now when you read Thiruvasaram, and this is for the youngsters, many of you are going to be doing science and various scientific subjects. And this was the 8th century, between the 8th and the 9th century. And Manickavasagar was such a visionary, and he makes so many references. And I think it's very important, particularly for the younger, upcoming generation, to remember these things. I'll give you one or two examples. In the Sivapuranam itself, he talks about almost an evolutionary concept. I'm tired of being reborn in various forms. As what? As those that are static and those that are mobile. Kandai, Manidarai, Kudai, Kanangalai, Balasurarai, Munivarai, Thurkkai. Ithawara Sangamathul Ella Purappum Purandalaitena Peruman. So he's taking us through the various forms of life. Some of them inorganic, solid, some of them with life and movement. And there is another phrase there. When we talk about an intelligent child, we talk about how broad his knowledge is. When you talk about someone who is clever, you say, oh, he has a broad knowledge of the subject. And what else can you say about the knowledge? You will say, oh, he has got a deep understanding of the subject. What else can you say? He has got a sharp understanding of his subject. And Manickavasagar puts that in beautiful words. And this is knowledge which is broad, which is deep and sharp. And can you name something that has that shape, which is deep, goes deep, becomes broad, and then goes into a sharp? That is the veil. Right? And that, as you remember, in Suranpur, that is what Amman gives Murugan to go and destroy the evil Suravan. So it is that knowledge which is portrayed on the Ahandan. And finally he ends it with saying, Solliya Paathin Porul Udandu Solluvar Silver, Sivapurathin Ullar, Sivanadikul Palloru Ettapanendu. I too used to make Solliya Paathin Porul Udandu Solluvar means we think that what he meant was the meaning of these words. Solliya Paathin. Somebody asked him, what all these songs, what do they mean? Porul enna. He simply showed Lord Nadarajar in Chidambaram and he said that is the Porul. Solliya Paathin Porul Unandu Solluvar. You have to realize, you have to understand, you have to feel the compassion that is shown by Lord Shivati. There are many other compositions of Manickavasagar. There is the Poti Tiruvavaram, which is another like the Sivapuranam, that's Poti Tiruvavaram. And there, as you grow older, you will realize this. From the stage of fertilization, the male and female, to the birth of the baby in 10 months. Thurkkai Prasamadi Thayudu Thanpadum Thurkkai Sahara Thuyaradai Pudaitum. He goes through every stage. In the first month this happens, in the second month. He had no instruments. He was not a gynecologist or an obstetrician. But he describes so clearly exactly how this took place. Every month is described. And if you compare that with modern obstetrics and gynecology, you can see the parallel. The certain critical stages in the birth of the child being described so clearly. We don't understand how he did it. And then in that same Poti Tiruvavaram, he talks about the Panchabuddhas. And he says, Paradai Andai Parandai Poti. Neeradai Namidai, Nihandai Poti. Thiridai Mundai, Tirandai Poti. So, Paradai, Parandai Poti, Neeradai, Nihandai. So, this is not just for rhyming. Each of these elements, which is the earth, which is water, which is fire, which is wind, and which is akasa or body. Each of these things have certain sensory qualities, and he describes them in detail. And it's important to recognize that these 5 elements are associated with 5 senses. And paralleling that was Abhirami Bhattar. Many years later, in Abhirami Andadi, Param, Puladam, Pangalam, Padam Visumbum, Murum, Murugan, Uru, Suvai, Oli, Uru, Yoli, Undrubada, Serum, Taravi. He sings about Ambaal, all the 5 elements with their respective sensory aspects. It's the same principle. Now, anybody wants to be a physicist, an astrophysicist, read Manickavasagar. Now, this is the 8th century, and this was, in the 15th, 16th centuries, Copernicus, Galileo were having great debates as to whether the world was a globe or whether it was flat. And Manickavasagar, in Thiruvandapagadi, begins by saying, Andapagadiyin undai purakkam, Alapperum Dhanmai Valapperum Kachi. That was his vision. He saw the whole universe extending into millions. And you know how he described it? When a pencil of light comes through a little hole on the roof in your house, what do you see in it? You see thousands of dust particles floating, don't you? You have seen this in your houses. And he talked about the universe similarly. Andapagadiyin undai purakkam, Alapperum Dhanmai Valapperum Kachi. ஒன்றுக்கொன்று நின்று எழில் பகரில் நூற்றோடு கோடியின் மேற்பட விரிந்தன இல்நுழை கதிரில் நுண் அடுப்புடைய. It's as if these dust particles are coming through this pencil of light. Similarly, this universe is full of these particles and planets, various objects which are round in shape. Andai pagadiyin undai purakkam, undai purakkam. These were the foresight. We are talking about a person, a gifted, a mystic, a philosopher, an intelligent man, one who was able to pray to God and sing these songs, which many of you heard the songs and sang too. And then we come to a section that I was asked to touch on later, towards the end of his life. What happened was, many other Nayanmar had major battles. Now, Manickavasagar was an intellect and he was a reasonably quiet person. He ended up living in Chidambaram, and apparently on the eastern side of the temple, he had a small hut. And every day he would come to the temple, pray, get back to his ashram, and he would write or compose more and more Manickavasagar. That was his life. What then happened was, the usual thing happens. In Sri Lanka, or Sivan as it was then, the Buddhists had heard of these things and they began to ridicule Saivite worship. Not only they began to ridicule Saivite worship, they began to ridicule some of the rites and some of these stories about Hindu saints. And what happened was, they came all the way to Chidambaram, the Buddhist priests, to prove that their faith was greater than the Saivite faith. Okay, there is no problem. I'm not trying to say that all other religions are useless. But they have, I think, no business to ridicule our faith and insult our faith and pick on certain practices that were going on in Saivite worship. So what then happened was, the people in Chidambaram, the Dikshitas and public, they didn't know how to deal with this. And they were praying to Lord Shiva, who then came in their sleep and told them, look, the only person who can resolve this is Manickavasagar, who is residing there, can you bring him? So what the people did was to bring Manickavasagar, and there was a debate. Apparently there was a scream and he wouldn't face them, there was a debate. And then Manickavasagar prayed to Goddess Saraswati. Goddess Saraswati is very important for you. Navaratri is coming soon, and you know have you heard of Kumara Guruvara? You know all those 10 songs. And one of those songs will be Thurkkai Tuvaidon the Halviyum, Sotsuvaivoi, Vakum Bera Panitharvai, Badanun Kadalum, Thurkkai Shadandamil Sillavum, Thundar, Sen Navidindra, Kakum Karunakadale, Sagarapana. So, the tongue, Goddess Saraswati resides on the tongue. So, Saint Manickavasagar prayed to Goddess Saraswati, and what happened was, all these people who were shouting, criticizing the Saivite faith became dumb. They couldn't speak after that. and the whole congregation were startled by this. In the meantime, the king of Sri Lanka, I think it was Gajabahu, he had a daughter who was dumb, who couldn't speak. He had heard about this miracle that happened. He brought his daughter and wanted Manickavasagar to make her speak. He converted to the Saivan faith, and what Manickavasagar did was he called the young princess and said, look, I will make you speak. And there is a game that is played by girls in South India. It is called Shari. That is, one person asks a question and the opposition has to reply. So what he did was, he then composed this song, Poosuvadum Vendiru, Unbadavum Kondaravam, Pesuvadum Tiruvayal Maraivodum Kanedi, Poosuvadum, Pesuvadum, Unbadavum Kondennai, Isanavan, Everyukum, Yelnamal, Saralo. So what he did was, okay, the first person, they said, look, Poosuvadum Vendiru, well, your God is having ash all over. Poosuvadum Vendiru. Unbadavam, and what else is he doing? He is having snakes on his body. Unbadavam Kondaravam. Pesuvadam Tiruvayal Maraivodum Kanadi. So all the Vedas, he is not uttering them. What is the meaning of this? She asks the Buddhist person. So he replies, Poosuvadam, Pesuvadam, Unbadavam Kondennai, Isanavan Abuyirkum Yalvana Sakuru. So he is doing all this, and we are with him, and he blesses us, and that is what is going on here. So don't mistake the symbolic aspects that you see. It is much more fundamental, and he is actually blessing us in the process. And the whole group of songs, each of them asking about a particular thing in our faith, not to be ridiculed, and Manickavasagar was able to give an explanation, and the princess was able to speak, and the king was very happy about this. And then Manickavasagar then was in Chidambaram, went back to the temple, and then his final chapter, Padiham, was the Achopa. Have you heard of Muthumari Ariyada? And he sang the Padiham. And finally, he merged with Lord Shiva as a flame. And that's how Manickavasagar's life went. That's a short presentation of some of the key features in his life, and also I have highlighted to you, particularly the young people who are going to study these subjects, some of the important, some of the very essential things that we should know about Manickavasagar, and the great vision, and the great intellect, and the great humble. He cries repeatedly in his songs. Nanam poi, anbum poi, nenjum poi, anal vinayen, aludar unai. He is constantly bringing himself down. He's a very humble man and saying, look, I can pray to you and you will then listen to me. And most of his songs are on that note. Wherever you go, your bones must melt. Ambaal Tadagundra, Enpolamania Iriti, Inidarul Perukamata, Anviladavare Kandal, Amman and Jumari. So that was his philosophy. It was faith, it was devotion, it was love. Thank you very much.
Parvati Vadayem Elambala Vinayagar Mayadiyarade Vinayagar Samvidhanathile இன்றைய தினம் மாணிக்கவாசக சுவாமிகளுடைய குரு பூஜை சிறப்பாக நடைபெற்று கொண்டிருக்கிறது. அந்த வகையிலே நால்வர் என்று மதிக்கப்பட்டு போற்றப்படுகின்ற நால்வர்களில் மாணிக்கவாசகருடைய சிறப்பு எனக்கு தெரிந்த வரையிலே ஈழத்திலே மார்கழி மாதத்திலே திருவாசகத்தை மட்டுமே படித்து வருவதை நான் பார்த்திருக்கிறேன். மற்ற அந்த ஒரு மார்கழி மாதத்திலே தேவார முதல்வராகிய பதிகங்களுக்கு திருக்காப்பிட்டு விட்டு விட்டு திருவாசகம் மட்டும் மார்கழி மாதத்திலே பாடுவார்கள் எனக்கு தெரிந்தவரை. அந்த மார்கழி மாதம் என்பது பீடை மாதம் என்று சொல்வார்கள். அந்த மார்கழி மாதத்திலே நற்காரியங்கள் செய்யக்கூடாது என்றொரு அந்த மாதம் கூடாது என்ற மாதிரி அந்த பீடை மாதம் என்று சொல்வார்கள். உண்மையிலே அது இறைவனுடைய பீட மாதம். இறைவனுடைய பீடத்திலே இருக்கக்கூடியதாகிய சுத்த ஆன்மாக்கள் தரிசிக்கின்ற காலம் அந்த மார்கழி மாதம். இறைவனை மட்டுமே நினைக்கக்கூடிய மாதம் மார்கழி மாதம். அந்த மாதத்திலே திருவாசகத்திற்கு ஒரு மாதத்தை ஒதுக்கி அந்த மாணிக்கவாசகருக்கு கொடுக்கப்பட்டிருக்கின்ற சிறப்பு அவருடைய பாடல்களுக்கு கொடுக்கப்படுகின்ற மரியாதையாகவும் அவருக்கு கொடுக்கின்ற கௌரவமாகவும் இருக்கின்றது. அது மாத்திரமல்ல, மார்கழி மாதத்திலே திருவம்பாவை உற்சவம் கூட நடைபெறுகின்றது. அதில் 7வது 8வது பூஜை புட்டு பூஜை என்கின்ற ஒரு பூஜை இருக்கின்றது. ஆலயத்திலேயும் அன்னமய கோஷம், பிராணமய கோஷம், மனோமய கோஷம், விஞ்ஞானமய கோஷம், ஆனந்தமய கோஷம் என்று 5 கோஷங்கள் இருக்கின்றது. இதில் ஆனந்தமய கோஷம், அன்னமய கோஷம் என்பது சுத்தமான ஆன்மாவையும், என்றால் உணவு என்பது, அன்னம் என்பது ஆன்மாவுடன் சம்பந்தப்பட்டது, ஜீவான்மாவையும், ஆனந்தமய கோஷம் என்பது இறைவனுடைய இருப்பிடத்தையும் குறிப்பிடுவது. இதில் 8வது பூஜையாக திருவிழா சமயங்களில் பார்த்தால் சப்பரம் இருக்கின்றது. சப்பர திருவிழா. சப்பர திருவிழா ஆலயத்தின் கோபுரத்தை குறிப்பது சப்பர திருவிழா. ஆலயத்தின் கோபுர வாசல் அன்னமய கோஷம். ஆக இந்த திருவம்பாவையிலே 7வது 8வது பூஜையிலே புட்டு பூஜை செய்வார்கள். அது அன்னம் சம்பந்தமானது, உணவு சம்பந்தமானது. அந்த புட்டு என்பது ஒரு பக்குவப்பட்ட ஜீவான்மாவாக இருக்கின்றது. அவிக்க முன்பு அது பச்சையாக இருக்கின்றது. அவித்த பின்பு அது பக்குவம் அடைகின்றது. அந்த உணவானது பக்குவப்பட்ட ஆன்மா என்கின்ற ஒரு நிலையை அந்த புட்டு பூஜை என்பது காட்டி நிற்கின்றது. மண்வெட்டிக்கும் மண்ணுக்கும் சம்பந்தம் இருக்கின்றது. அதே போல புட்டுக்கும் மண்வெட்டிக்கும் சம்பந்தம் இருக்கின்றது. எப்படி என்று கேட்டால் மண்ணை கொத்துவார்கள், புட்டையும் கொத்துவார்கள். ஆகவே பக்குவப்பட்ட ஆன்மாவுக்கு உரிய உணவு, அவிக்கப்பட்ட உணவு கிரகவாசிகள், அதாவது கிரகத்தை கொண்டிருப்பவர்கள் பக்குவப்பட்ட ஆன்மாக்கள் என்று கூறலாம். மீனாக இருந்தால் விரைவாக சமைக்கக்கூடிய உணவு புட்டு. ஆகவே அந்த பக்குவப்பட்ட ஆன்மா ஒன்று திருவம்பாவையிலே புட்டு பூஜையாக இருக்கின்றது. பக்குவப்படுகின்ற ஆன்மா அன்னமய கோஷத்திலே இறைவனை நினைக்கிறது. இறைவன் இன்னொன்ற உணவு இறைவனை சிந்திக்கக்கூடியதாக இருக்க வேண்டும். அடுத்ததாக பிராணமய கோஷம், பிராணனாலே இறைவனை சிந்திக்க வேண்டும். அடுத்தது மனோமய கோஷம், மனதினாலே இறைவனை நினைக்க வேண்டும். அடுத்தது விஞ்ஞானமய கோஷம், அறிவினாலே இறைவனை நினைக்க வேண்டும். இப்படியாக படிகடந்து போகின்ற பொழுது இறைவனுடைய ஆனந்தமய கோஷத்திலே, ஆனந்த மனோலயத்திலே லயப்படலாம் என்கின்ற செய்தியையும் இங்கே மாணிக்கவாசகருடைய வரலாற்றை நாடகமாக பதிவு செய்தார்கள். குழந்தைகள் தமிழ் படிப்பதோடு மட்டுமல்லாமல் நாடகத்துறையிலும் இறங்கி தங்களுடைய நடிப்பாற்றல் மூலமாக இங்கே சிறப்பாக அந்த நாடகத்தை வழங்கியிருந்தார்கள். புலோர் மீட்டிங் கூட போடவில்லை என்றாலும் சூடு மணலே என்பது போல அந்த குழந்தை வடிவாக இங்கே தனது கால்களை சுடுவதை வடிவாக காட்டியிருந்தார். அது தவிர அரசனாக நடித்தவர்களும் சரி, உதவியாளர்களாக நடித்தவர்களும் சரி, தங்களுக்கு கொடுக்கப்பட்ட பணியை மிக குறுகிய காலத்திலே பயின்று அதை இங்கே அரங்கேறி இருந்தார்கள். அவர்களுக்கு விநாயகருடைய இந்த நாடகத்தை ஏற்படுத்திய ஆசிரியர்களுக்கும் எங்களுடைய நன்றியர்கள், வித்யாவர்களுக்கும் எங்களுடைய அனுசரணையாக இருந்த பெற்றோர்களுக்கும் எங்களுடைய அன்பையும் பாராட்டையும் தெரிவித்துக் கொண்டு தொடர்ந்து இந்த மாணிக்கவாசகருடைய குரு பூஜை பூர்த்தியிலே அவருடைய நமசிவாய பதிகத்தை, அதற்கான விளக்கத்தை வழங்கிய எங்களுடைய அன்புக்குரிய கலாநிதி சிவகுமாரன் மாஸ்டர் அவர்களுக்கும் எங்களுடைய அவருக்கும் விநாயகப் பெருமானுடைய திருவருள் கிடைக்க பிரார்த்தித்துக் கொண்டு வருகின்ற 12ஆம் தேதி விநாயகப் பெருமானுடைய மகோத்சவம் ஆரம்பமாக இருக்கின்றது. அதில் 24ஆம் தேதி வேட்டை திருவிழா அன்று சுந்தரமூர்த்தி நாயனாருடைய குருபூசை தினமாக இருக்கின்றது. மகோத்சவ காலத்திலே நிலையை பார்த்து பொறுத்து அதன்படி அதற்கான ஏற்பாடுகளை செய்து கொள்ளலாம் என்பதையும் இந்த இடத்திலே கூறிக்கொண்டு எல்லாம் உள்ள விநாயகப் பெருமானுடைய திருவருள் உங்கள் அனைவருக்கும் கிடைக்க பிரார்த்தித்து மணிவாசனுடைய திருவருளும் உங்கள் அனைவருக்கும் கிடைக்க பிரார்த்தித்து இத்துடன் அமைகின்றோம். நம்ம பார்வதி